Hey! I'm not sure why I'm writing this, maybe just a vent. I never thought I'd end up in a situation where a single order could wipe out years of my work, and then I'd be blamed for it. But here I am, 34 years old, unemployed, sitting at my kitchen table with a laptop, typing this post between job applications and trying not to get so angry I start drafting threats to my old boss. I worked at a small IT company in Jacksonville, Florida. We specialized in analytics for logistics firms' warehouses, routing, efficiency reports. It wasn't my dream job, but it was stable. I led a project focused on automating reporting. Might sound small, but if done right, it saved clients tons of time and money. We had dozens of scripts, archived reports stored on internal servers, and a schedule for regular backups. I was in charge of all of it. At first, I didn't plan on staying long. But after a few months, I got into it. I've always been one of those people who loves it when a system works perfectly, without surprises. I enjoyed digging into data, finding inconsistencies, catching calculation errors no one else saw. I was the guy who could tell a client exactly why their logistics were lagging every Tuesday. And clients appreciated that. I built strong relationships with them. I never used technical jargon, I always explained things clearly and directly. One client, who ran a major distribution center, once emailed me, "You're easy to work with. First analyst I've met who doesn't make me feel like an idiot." That stuck with me. It felt good knowing I was doing something useful. I wasn't saving the world, but I was helping people not lose money over spreadsheet mistakes. I get to work earlier than anyone else. I'd start the coffee, check the monitoring dashboard, review how the scripts ran overnight. If there were glitches, I fixed them. Discrepancies? I'd stay at it until I found the source. Sometimes I stayed late just to get something perfectly done, not because anyone told me to, but because I wanted to. I liked feeling reliable. I liked that coworkers came to me for advice. Especially Joel, we hit it off quickly, and spent our lunches talking shop or podcasts or random crap. Our boss was Gary. And here's where the trouble starts. He was the type who loved to give orders just for the sake of it. Didn't care about details, never listened to warnings. Everything had to be done now, or better yet, yesterday. I tried to nudge him toward reason a few times. He shut it down hard. Once he said, "You're smart, but don't argue with me. Arguing is inefficient." That was when I knew, you could be good in this system, but if you weren't convenient, you were expendable. Everything collapsed in early April. It was a Tuesday. I'd just gotten in, barely poured my coffee. Gary storms into my office, furious, tosses a flash drive on my desk. "We need to clear the D server. Now. All of it. New project coming in, and we need the space." I almost choked. "Wait, D server has archived exports, old backups, client files, reports." He cut me off. I said, "Clear it. Everything. If it was important, it should already be in the cloud. Not everything is backed up." I tried. "There are unique. Do it, or you're gone," he barked. I shut my mouth. I knew there was valuable stuff on that server. But I had no time, no backup access, and no choice. I complied. I deleted everything. And it felt like burning down my own house. 2 days later, I was called into the conference room. Gary and HR were waiting. I sat down. Gary looked at me like he'd never seen me before. "You overstepped," he said. "You deleted critical data required for a client audit. We're losing the contract. This is unacceptable. We're letting you go for gross negligence." I froze. Tried to explain, he gave the order, I warned him. "Your word against mine," he said flatly. "You can contest it if you want." HR said nothing. The paperwork was already done. I was out. No explanation. No defense. I packed up. Joel quietly helped. On the way out he said, "This sucks, man. I'd vouch for you, but we both know how this place works." I drove home in silence. Cracked a beer. Sat at the kitchen table. And it hit me, I lost. Boss won, me zero. The month after I got fired felt like a fog. Days blurred into nights. I slept whenever, ate whatever, washed dishes if I felt like it. The TV was on most of the time, but I couldn't tell you what I watched. My inbox was flooded with emails from LinkedIn and job boards, but I opened them with no energy. If it weren't for the mortgage and the feeling that I was slowly disintegrating, I might not have moved at all. Every morning started the same. I'd sit at the kitchen table, in socks, staring into a cup of cold coffee, trying to remember who I used to be. Yesterday, I was an analyst, respected, a guy people listened to. Today, just some guy with a laptop, stamped with the label incompetent. I went on a few interviews. One was for a consulting firm, another for a startup whose founder looked younger than my coffee maker. They all said the same, "We're not sure, we need someone with a different background, we'll think about it." I heard, "You're damaged goods." Then one night, while eating pasta straight out of the pot and sitting on the living room floor, I got a text from Joel. We hadn't talked much since I left. I figured he was keeping his distance to stay clean. But he messaged, "You still know how to write scripts and fix other people's messes?" I stared at the screen and wrote back, "Yeah. You still not great at avoiding them?" 5 minutes later, he called. "I left too," he said. "It's a toxic dump now. I've been freelancing, doing analytics for small businesses. I was thinking, why don't we team up?" I didn't know what to say. I had no plan. I could barely find matching socks. But the idea clicked. If the system tossed me out like trash, maybe it was time to build my own. So we did. We registered a sole proprietorship under his name. He already had an old license, easier that way. We called it Clear Data Partners. Threw together a website, basic template, white background, blue contact us button. Wrote that we were a team with experience in large-scale analytical projects. Mostly true. We started out working from a coffee shop on the corner, solid Wi-Fi, and the barista stopped asking what we wanted, just brought 2 Americanos and 1 croissant we split. Sometimes we worked at my place, sometimes in his garage. He had an old couch, a table, and a massive whiteboard stained from past business attempts. The first week was dead. We sent proposals on freelancing sites, answered RFPs, messaged local companies on Facebook offering free audits. One guy replied, "Are you scammers?" We laughed, at least he responded. Our first gig was with an auto repair shop. They were missing money from the till. Turned out their bookkeeper didn't know Excel, and every 5th payment was getting lost. We fixed it in 3 hours, got $150, and a thank you. Then we did a job for a fitness club. They were losing clients after the second week. I analyzed attendance logs, surveys, subscriptions. Turns out, staff stopped calling new members after the first week. We recommended automated reminders. They were thrilled. The money was small, but it was money for using our brains. My brain. Then came the real break. A small logistics company reached out. Orders were up, profits down. I spent 3 days deep in their data. Found duplicate routes, incorrect delivery fees, third-party vendor overcharges. We built a report, added visualizations, gave them clear action items. 2 days later, the CEO posted a LinkedIn review. Tagged us. Said we saved the quarter. That post got more attention than I ever expected. People messaged me. Asked questions. Wanted help fixing Excel. And for the first time in a while, I woke up not with dread, but with curiosity. Who reached out today? The jobs kept coming. Not big money, but real. I could pay my mortgage without panic. I felt in control again. No more walking on eggshells in a toxic office. No more waiting to get called into a meeting to talk. One night, Joel and I were sitting outside his garage. It was warm, and the sky was turning deep blue. He pulled out 2 beers and said, "To getting fired." I raised mine. To being our own bosses. We drank. And I realized something had shifted. Something clicked in my head. Me one, boss one. 6 months went by. Honestly, I barely noticed. Joel and I were grinding, day after day, no vacations, no weekends, no let's deal with it later. Work started coming in regularly. We weren't scraping for every dollar anymore, we were choosing who we wanted to work with. We had repeat clients. We rented a small office on the 3rd floor of a business center, no elevator, but it had windows and a coffee machine that always leaked. On our first day there, I came in an hour early just to stand by my desk. It was wood, used, a little wobbly, but it was ours. On the wall, a whiteboard already marked with monthly goals. We bought 2 mesh chairs that squeaked when you leaned back. And 2 new computers. That's also when we brought on our first interns, Nick and Sarah, local college students, sharp and eager. I didn't feel like a boss. I felt like a grown-up. Everything felt real. We had our process, client audit proposal implementation. We updated the website, designed a logo, started an Instagram, Sarah insisted. One of us always replied to emails within an hour. Clients appreciated that. We didn't promise miracles, just solid, clean work. One day in early October, a new request came through our site. A logistics company from a neighboring county. They wanted a route audit, pricing review, and dashboard visualizations. Pretty standard job, but it looked like a good-sized project. I called their rep, his name was Nathan. The call started smoothly. I took notes, he walked me through their mess. About 15 minutes in, he said. We used to work with another analytics firm, but had to drop them. Why's that? I asked, writing it down. They messed up. Bad. Lost some critical data right before an investor report. We were literally sitting on the floor of the server room trying to salvage drafts. I froze. When was this? I asked, trying to sound casual. Spring. April, I think. My heart sped up. I stayed quiet, just listening. He kept talking. And you know what's weird? The guy we worked with, Isaac, I think he seemed solid. Then he just disappeared. And everything went to hell. I swallowed. Took a sip of water. Then said, I'm Isaac. There was a pause. Nathan asked, Wait, you're that Isaac? I smiled faintly. The very one. He gave a long no way away and laughed. Well, damn. Not only are you still around, you've got your own firm. That's awesome. You were the only one back then who knew what was going on. We talked about the project, agreed on a pilot. 2 days later, we signed the contract. Joel clapped me on the back. We just signed the client that got you fired. Not the client's fault, I corrected. It was the boss who didn't listen. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in the dark, thinking about deleting those files. How unsure I was. How I'd hoped none of it would matter. How they kicked me out like I was the problem. And now, this client was with us. Because we were reliable. Because I knew my shit. Because I made it through. I didn't gloat. I didn't message my old boss. Didn't post any look at me now garbage. But something warm stirred inside me. Quiet pride. Like the universe had nudged me and said, yeah, you were right. Nathan turned out to be a great partner. We rebuilt their route logic, optimized costs, implemented a simple control dashboard. A month later, he wrote, you saved us more than you charged. That was nice. But the best part was knowing we didn't land this by accident, we were the top choice. One evening, I was closing up at the office. The interns had left, Joel too. It was quiet. Desks, walls, monitors. I stood in the doorway, flipped the light back on just to look around. I was standing in a space we built from nothing. Where things worked. Where no one barked delete everything and threw me out the next day. I slowly turned the lights off again. Me too, boss one. It was a regular morning. The lights in the office clicked on with their usual slow hum, the coffee machine hissed out something vaguely caffeinated, and everything was quiet. The interns hadn't arrived yet, Joel was running late after a meeting with the accountant, and I had the office to myself, the kind of silence introverts treasure. Just me, my monitor, and a neat task list. Business as usual. Until that email. At first, I didn't even notice it. The sender was generic, almost suspiciously bland, operations.lead@redacted.com, subject, consultation proposal. I almost flagged it as spam. But something made me pause. A gut feeling maybe. Something in the back of my head said, read it. So I opened it. The message was emotionless, clinical. Hello Isaac. We've been observing your progress and see that your recent work with clients has been impressive. At this time, we are exploring the possibility of engaging an external expert to assist with restructuring internal processes and restoring confidence among staff and clients. If you're open to discussion, we'd appreciate a short meeting or call. Regards. Management. No name. No signature. No direct reference. But I knew. I just knew who it was. I read it 5 times. My heart beat faster, not from fear, but from, what? Rage? No. Recognition. They were watching. They saw. And now, they came. I left the office, took a walk around the block. The autumn air was crisp, the kind that smells like leaves and change. In my head, a single sentence kept repeating, they need me now. Not because I was their friend. Not because they were sorry. Because I became someone they couldn't ignore. A couple hours later, I replied. Available today after 2 p.m. for a video call. The meeting was scheduled via Google Meet. 1 minute before, I checked the camera, straightened my collar like that would change anything. The screen loaded. There he was. My old boss. The one. Older now. Tired looking. He sat in a bare room, no posters, no shelves, no plants. Just him, a laptop, and a glass of water. Good to see you, Isaac, he said with a weak smile. Good afternoon, I replied flatly. No, nice to see you too. He didn't waste time. No small talk. No fluff. Just a quiet admission, things were falling apart. A few key clients had left. The team was disheartened. Processes weren't working. There was no trust. The structure he once controlled was crumbling. We remember how solid things were under your direction, he said. You had a gift for making complexity manageable. We'd like to bring you back. As an external consultant. To help rebuild what worked. I listened. He spoke with a tone I'd never heard from him before. Not quite humility, but a crack in the usual arrogance. No apology. No direct acknowledgement. Just a man realizing, maybe too late, that he needed help. What do you think? He asked. I think I'm not interested in working with people who throw others under the bus when it gets hot, I said calmly. I've been there. I'm not going back. He nodded. Maybe he expected that. The call ended without drama. I leaned back in my chair and took a long breath. No fireworks. No rage. Just a full stop. A quiet end to a story I never asked for. But the day wasn't done. An hour later, we had a presentation for a prospective client, a large regional retail chain I'd had my eye on for a while. Joel showed up right on time, dropped the final version of the slide deck, and we walked into the conference room. 20 minutes later, the client said yes. 2 hours after that, the contract was signed. Later I found out they used to work with them. With that same company. And left for the same reasons. They left. For us. I stood by the window, watching people hustle home in the evening drizzle. My phone buzzed. A message from Joel. Contracts approved. Invoice going out. Champagne? I just smiled. That evening we went to a bar. First time in months, not for a meeting, not for planning. Just because. We sat by the window. The lights reflected off beer bottles, the streetlights flickered in the wet pavement. Joel scrolled his phone and said, So that happened. I nodded. You think he really understands what he did? Maybe. Took him a year to see what he lost. Maybe another to admit it. He gave me a look. Is that satisfaction on your face? I finished my drink. That's the scoreboard. Me 3, boss 1. Somewhere between my third coffee of the day and our quarterly planning session, I realized something. I no longer thought about him. Gary, my former boss, was gone from my head. Not as a person, I'd still recognize him on the street. But as an idea. A symbol. That internal antagonist I used to argue with in the shower. He wasn't there anymore. The business was doing well. We'd hired a 4th team member. We had a designer, standardized templates, even our name on the door, white letters across frosted glass. Sometimes I'd stop at the door just to look at it. Not out of pride. Out of reality. To remind myself, this is real. I started living again. Real life. I had weekends now. I went for morning runs. I started therapy for the first time in my life. My therapist said I'd spent years running on internal tension and now, maybe, it was time to learn how to just exist. Not survive. Exist. I was learning. One afternoon at lunch, Tom, our former colleague, now on our support team, brought him up again. You know where Gary ended up? No, I said, not immediately placing the name. Harcourt Analytics. Not management though. Project coordinator. Basically above intern level. Whole team there kind of mocks him now. Says he walks like a guy who's been snapped in half. I listened, mostly quiet. No anger. Not even pity. Just the sense that everything had settled where it was supposed to. Weeks passed. One day we received a project request from a company with a familiar name. Took me a second to place it. Then I saw the CC line, g.palmer@harcourt-analytics.com. The loop closed. I could have turned it down. That would have been easy. Clean. Even mature, maybe. But I didn't. Because revenge means you're still playing the game. And I wasn't. We built our usual presentation. Sharp. Clear. No tricks. Just honest, focused work. Joel and I didn't even have to talk about it, he knew what this was. We did our best. Not to send a message. Just because that's who we are now. There were 8 people on the Zoom call. One of them was him. Gary. He looked older, quieter, in a gray shirt, headphones on. Didn't introduce himself. Barely spoke. Just nodded, sometimes looked down, taking notes. I introduced myself plainly, same voice as always. He didn't react. Maybe he recognized me. Maybe not. I didn't care. The presentation ended without drama. 2 days later, we got the contract. We started work. I never spoke to him. He never reached out. One night I stayed late at the office. Everyone had gone home. The lights were off except for my desk lamp. The city lights blinked through the windows. My inbox was empty. My task list was clear. I rinsed my mug. Turned off the lamp. Walked toward the door. The glass panel read Isaac and Joel Solutions. I ran my fingers over the lettering. Smooth. Clean. Real. And I realized he never wrote to me. No apology. No, you were right. No, never thought you'd grow like this. Not even a hollow well done. And honestly? Good. Because the most important thing is, I'm no longer waiting for it. So here I am, writing this, because I need to tell someone. If you're reading this, and you've just been fired, or humiliated, or made to feel like garbage, listen to me, this might be the best thing that's ever happened to you. If I hadn't been fired, I'd still be in that chair. Still taking crap from that man. Still eating sad noodles in the break room convincing myself this is fine. But now I have something real. My own work. My own people. My own life. No toxic bosses. No fear. Just respect for myself, for others, for the work. I won. Not because I'm rich. Not because I proved something. But because I stopped needing permission to believe in myself. Me 4, boss, isn't even in the game anymore.